Public Speaking Project presents Writing Transition Statements by Lisa Schreiber, Ph.D., and Julie Schmutz. Voice talent by Nicholas Givens, with Rebecca Nyer as the audio engineer and Morgan Hartraft as the media production specialist. Imagine you are listening to a speech about Easter Island. 1 second, the speaker is talking about its physical location off the coast of Chile, and what seems like mid-sentence, she switches to talking about the history of the island. You wonder if you missed something. You go back through a previous point in your head, trying to connect the two ideas. Now you notice she is on her third point, and you're even more lost than you were. The reason this speech feels disjointed and hard to follow is probably because the speaker forgot to plan her transitions. There are many types of transitions, such as those that contrast ideas, those that indicate a change in time, and those that emphasize the significance of a point. Regardless of the type of transition you select, it is important to plan them carefully so your audience can follow your speech with ease. In this module, we provide a brief overview of writing transition statements. To learn more, check out the chapter called Organizing an Outline in our free online textbook at www.publicspeakingproject.org. The purpose of this module is to show beginning speakers how to add transition statements to their speeches. To start the module, we will explain what a transition is and what makes a transition effective. Then, we look at different types of verbal transitions which are used in between your main points and your subpoints. In the last part of this module, we explore how to use nonverbal cues as transitions. Transitions are words, sentences, and phrases that help you move smoothly from one idea in your speech to another. Typically, transition sentences start with words or phrases such as moreover, as a result, or above all, that clue listeners in to the direction of the speech. The best transitions are those that help listeners understand the relationship between the points of your speech. In other words, transitions are the verbal equivalent to the "you are here" maps you see at the malls and national parks. Good transitions give the audience a sense of the logic and organizational structure of your speech. For instance, in a speech on the Galapagos Islands, Aran makes the main points of his speech very clear with this transition. Now that you have an idea of what has happened with the Galapagos Islands in the past, let's turn our attention to the sights you can see while visiting the Galapagos Islands today. At this point, you should have a sense of what a transition is and how it should function in your speech. George Grice and John Skinner have identified 4 types of verbal transitions you might use in your speech, and we turn our attention to them now. A complement of something refers to the number of components that make a thing complete. Thus, a complementary transition adds one thing to another to make a whole speech or a whole main point. If Morgan is giving her speech on 5 key sales techniques, her complementary transition may sound something like this. In addition to appropriate eye contact, it is critical to listen carefully to the client's comments and questions. Or, let's say Brian is doing a speech on motorcycles, and his first main point focuses on the different types. To make this main point clear, even with its many parts, he could say, the first type of the motorcycle is the sports bike. The second type of motorcycle is the touring bike. The third type is a little bit different, and this is the cruiser. Causal transition statements point to a cause and effect relationship between 2 points. If Naomi is doing a speech on the problem of obesity, her causal transition may sound like this. So, as you can see, obesity rates have risen all over the United States. Consequently, the incidence of chronic health problems associated with obesity has also increased. If Tom is giving a speech on why men should switch from pants to kilts, he could move from one point to the next with this statement. Not only will wearing a kilt get you noticed, according to the Scottish Medical Journal, wearing a kilt is also likely to make you more fertile. When we contrast 2 things, we are comparing them in respect to their differences. Hence, a contrasting transition shows how two ideas differ. In a speech on how to buy a laptop computer, Javar might have a contrasting transition that sounds like this. In spite of how difficult it can be to keep track of all the features that separate the best from the worst laptops, selecting a laptop can be easy if you use an online buying guide like Consumer Reports. If Rosa was lobbying her coworkers to take a cut in pay so that no one in the office would be laid off, she might say, "Although we will all have to cut back a bit on our spending if we agree to a cut in pay, the benefits of this temporary change significantly outweigh the inconveniences." Lastly, a chronological transition shows the time relationship between points or the order of things. Here are two illustrations. In the first example, Hector is giving his speech on how to make empanadas. He says, "After the dough is prepared and cut into circles, you will add your ground beef filling." In the second example, Lydia is giving a speech on historical law related to homosexuality. Her chronological transition goes like this. Although in the 17th century homosexual acts were still punishable by death, by the end of the 18th century, some countries were beginning to decriminalize homosexual behavior. Chronological transitions are also used in introductions and conclusions to preview and review the points of a speech. An initial preview in the introduction lets the audience know what main points will be coming in the speech. For instance, if Ben was doing a speech about his favorite band, the Beatles, his initial preview might be, "Today, I am going to talk about when and how the Beatles were formed, how they rose to popularity, and finally why they decided to break up." In a conclusion, you would give a final summary of your key ideas. This summary statement reviews all the major ideas of your speech before driving your central idea home with the concluding statement. If Laurel was doing a speech about why the penny should be eliminated, her final summary would sound like this. As you can see, there are many reasons to eliminate the penny, many benefits to U.S. taxpayers and consumers, and it could be done without the loss of jobs. In the last part of this module, we'll look at nonverbal transitions. Nonverbal transitions involve using your body language and physical positioning to show a change in your points. This could include a facial expression, vocal pause, body movement, or a nod of your head. This could also include moving to or from a visual aid. Say you are doing a speech on the effectiveness of various bleaches. You have a visual aid prepared that shows examples of each type of bleach on various articles of clothing. As you begin the point where you compare the effectiveness of each type of bleach, you move over to the visual aid to illustrate what you are saying. This movement gives the audience a visual cue that a new point is beginning. If you are not standing behind a podium, you can also take a step in one direction as you segue from point 1 to point 2, and then another step as you move from point 2 to 3. Pausing briefly after each of your main points is also a cue that something new is coming. So let's review. Transitions are words, sentences, and phrases that help you move smoothly from one idea in your speech to another. It is important for speakers to think carefully about transitions, as these words, phrases, and sentences help the audience to follow along. There are 4 types of verbal transitions. A complementary transition adds one thing to another to make a whole speech or a whole main point. A causal transition shows the cause and effect relationship between two main points. Contrasting transitions show how two ideas differ. And chronological transitions show the time relationship between points or the order of things. In addition to verbal transitions, speakers can also use nonverbal transitions, which involve using body movements or silence to segue from point to point. Remember, using transitions well will keep your speech more organized. Many new speakers make the mistake of simply listing all of their information and expecting the audience to put it all together. Using the tips in this module, your speech will be more polished and everyone in your audience will know exactly what you are trying to say. Thank you for visiting the Public Speaking Project's virtual classroom. To view other modules about speech writing, go to www.publicspeakingproject.org.